Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on understanding the Biometric Privacy Code and its implications. I'm Caroline Perry from Break, the road safety charity. And firstly, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the sponsors of today's event, AutoSense. AutoSense are one of our corporate partners, and we wouldn't be able to run our fleet activities such as our webinars and other events without the support of corporate partners like them. If you're new to Break, we're a road safety charity working to prevent road deaths and injuries, make communities safer, and support people bereaved and injured in crashes through a range of initiatives, including our events, awards, and resources for fleet professionals. We also run initiatives such as Road Safety Week in New Zealand, Beep Beep Days for young children, and provide free support resources to people bereaved in crashes. And at the end of the webinar, I'll mention a couple of forthcoming initiatives that we have. Our fleet safety activities include webinars like this, seminars, and our annual Australasian Fleet Champions Awards programme. And we also provide resources sharing best practice information. And again, I'll mention a couple of forthcoming events and activities we've got at the end of today's webinar. So on to the first of today's speakers. I'm delighted to introduce Charles Dawson. As CEO of AutoSense, Charles drives the organisation's focus on delivering trusted, high-quality solutions that create safer journeys for all road users. He's a strong advocate for smarter technology, better training, and data-driven insights that support fleets to make meaningful changes. So thanks very much, Charles, for joining us, and I'll just get you to unmute yourself and we can see your video. That's great, and we can see your slides as well. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and I'm very pleased that the technology is working. It's always a bit of a guess on that. Firstly, AutoSense has been around for about 15 years, and we're very excited to continue to sponsor charities like Break, the road safety charity, because this is something that's very dear to our hearts in terms of helping people get home safely every day, and everything we can do in this space is really important to us. I've been asked to speak a little bit just very quickly about the biometric codes and the necessity and proportionality of it. And so I guess put simply, what that is why do we need to do things that even interact with the biometric code, and how does some of the technology kind of work into that space? We all know that driving is one of the major critical risks that most businesses face. There are very few businesses where other risks actually become more than the risk of having people actually out on the road, etc. So what we've seen is work-related fatalities from vehicle incidents come through at around about 28% across all industries. And in the industry that we spend a lot of time working in, which is the transport and warehousing sector, it comes out at 82%. So it really is a major cause of risk and concern. So anything we can do to make that safer is really important. We also know that fatigue and distraction are a major reason for those critical injuries and things that we see out there. So fatigue is said to have caused around about 9% of truck accidents and 7% of bus serious crashes. And those are the ones that we have had reported. So we know that that number is probably much more significant than that. AutoSense has around 6,300 Guardian systems in circulation at the moment, looking after over 300 companies or clients. And across those 6,300 units, we continue to wake up 53 drivers every day. So to give you an idea, that's a large city bus full of people that we actually have to wake up because they have fallen asleep during the day. And that's not to mention the people that have actually moved into what we call an impaired state, generally equivalent to the same level as being over the limit from an alcohol point of view. And we just see a massive amount of that occurring. Distraction, another massive one there, around about 162 distraction events every day, and of those 38 are cell phone events. So those are the ones that we've actually can see the cell phones in the footage. We know it's probably even more than that. So a massive amount of distraction out there. when we're looking at using technology to make people safer in these spaces, there's one voice that says that the safety is the key piece, but we must also take into account the various privacy regimes around GDPR, for example, out of Europe. And it's really, really important that we understand how those regulations are going to affect, I guess, ourselves as a supplier, but also our clients and all the employees that are running in those vehicles and things where that technology is placed. We need to understand whether, in fact, there are less intrusive measures that can reasonably achieve the real-time detection of driver fatigue and distraction, and also those critical early interventions that will prevent the accidents from happening or the incidents from happening, as opposed to just reporting on them in the aftermath. I'm not going to run through everything on this particular table, but suffice to say that there is plenty of information that's out there, that information that we look at and use every day that can assist ourselves and yourselves as people running vehicles, and of course employees as well, in terms of understanding where the technology comes in, how it fits with whether it be privacy policies or the biometric policies that we're going to talk about today. So realistically, we find these days that there aren't any reasonable, practical, less intrusive alternatives that are necessary out there, and we continue to look into that space. But we do end up having to use technology that does come into this area, and does mean that whether it be ourselves as a supplier, other suppliers, or also customers and things, employees that are out there that are going to come into contact with the biometric rules. And so therefore, what we're going to talk about today is just really, really important to understand well, and understand what implications it has for you, your employees, and your business. So that's everything I have now. So I'm going to hand it back to Caroline, and I look forward to answering any questions or queries as the procedure goes on.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Charles. That was a great introduction for us to all of this. So if you have any questions specifically for Charles, please, as I said, feel free to put them into the Q&A ready for the panel discussion. But we will move straight along to our next speaker. And I'm delighted that we've got Ella Griffiths, who is the Principal Policy Advisor in the policy team at the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. So Ella has been at the office for almost 5 years and in the policy team for 4 years. She brings operational experience from a role in the office's investigation and dispute resolution team. She worked on the development of the Biometric Code and currently works on privacy issues arising in the law and order portfolio. So we're really grateful that she's been able to give some of her time today to explain some of the key aspects of the code for us. So welcome, Ella. I'll get you to come off mute and share your camera. That's so that we can see you, and I will stop sharing. Thanks.
Cool. I'll just bring up my slides.
That's great. We can see those.
We can see those. Perfect. Yeah, cool. I have 18 slides to get through, so see if I can do that in under 15 minutes. So I'm going to run through just a little bit about us. Some of you may have heard of the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, some of you may not have, that's fine. And a little bit about the Privacy Act, which is the piece of legislation which we operate under and regulate. And then I'll move on to the Biometrics Code, and I'll cover sort of 3 key things: who has to comply with the code, what activities does the code apply to, and last, what does the code actually do? And I'll cover the 3 sort of main operative rules in the code. So the Office of the Privacy Commissioner is a government-funded organisation, but we are independent of government or ministerial control, so we don't have to answer to ministers. We're politically neutral. And Michael Webster, who's in the photo there, is New Zealand's Privacy Commissioner currently. He was appointed in 2022, and I think he's the 5th Privacy Commissioner we've had. We're about sort of middling size. We've got about 45 staff, and it's our job to regulate the Privacy Act. And a quick disclaimer here. So we don't endorse or approve products or activities undertaken by agencies, organizations. That's because, while we have a role in advising and educating, we also have a compliance role. So we don't want to interfere with that should someone down the line make a complaint or we want to take enforcement action. So nothing said today is a approval or endorsement of any products. Quick intro to the Privacy Act. So the heart of the Privacy Act, there are 13 information privacy principles. We also refer to them as the IPPs. And they are some quite broadly framed principles that set out how organizations and businesses, what they need to comply with when they're collecting and handling people's information. So you can see a list of them on the side there. The first 4 sort of relate to collecting information. So only collecting information you need, being transparent and fair. Then the next set are about handling it. So you've got to keep it secure. You've got to make sure it's accurate before you use it. If people want to access their personal information, you need to give them access, unless there's a reason not to. And you should be deleting it when you no longer need it. And then there's sort of some general rules around use and sharing information. So what the office does is if there has been an alleged breach of one of these privacy principles, we investigate complaints from individuals. We also undertake our own compliance and enforcement action. We conduct broad inquiries. So you might be familiar with the inquiry we did into the use of facial recognition technology in supermarkets. We also do guidance and education. If agencies have serious data breaches, they need to notify us. And we make submissions on proposed legislation that have privacy angles. And then lastly, we have a role issuing privacy codes of practice. So these are codes of practice often another sort of systems, they're just guidance or they're things that organizations sign up to. A code of practice under the Privacy Act is actually like secondary legislation. It's legally enforceable. And what it's used for is sort of modifying these general principles for a particular sector or class of information. So we've got one for health information. And there's one for credit reporters as well. And they are generally used to, not all the time, but generally used to apply slightly stricter protections for more sensitive information where it is appropriate. So the Biometrics Code is one of these privacy codes of practice. And it was issued by the Privacy Commissioner in the middle of last year. As I said before, it is legally enforceable, so it's not just a piece of guidance or a voluntary instrument. The rules in it are actually the legal requirements that an agency doing biometric processing needs to comply with. It's in force currently. Although if a business was already using a biometric system on the 3 November last year, then they've got a bit more time to comply. And the last thing to note is that the Privacy Commissioner is going to review the code within 3 years. We are aware this is quite an evolving area, and we want to review how it's working, whether the settings that we've put in place are still appropriate. Who has to comply with the rules in the code? So the Biometrics Code applies to all businesses and organisations that are also covered by the Privacy Act. So it's got a very broad application, but it only applies to them when they're carrying out a biometric processing activity, which I'll talk more about soon. There are a couple of caveats to that. So organisations that provide health services don't have to comply. I mentioned that there's a health code, so they would be complying with that instead. And it's also sort of reasonably anticipated that health organisations do use people's biometrics in order to provide health services. So there's sort of a different set of considerations there. The code doesn't generally apply to ordinary people. So, you know, when you use your iPhone to use your face to unlock your iPhone, that kind of activity, unless what you're doing is highly offensive in some way. And then organisations who use third parties, so you've contracted with a vendor to either use their system or to do biometric processing on your behalf. So the principal organisation is responsible for ensuring that what's happening is Privacy Act compliant or Biometrics Code compliant, not the third party. However, the third party can, you know, you definitely want to be setting up a good relationship so they can help you make sure you're compliant or using your contract. And we've got guidance on our website about working with third parties and what you might want to think about to make sure that you're compliant with the Privacy Act. What activity does the code apply to? So the code applies to the activity of biometric processing and to biometric information that's collected, used, or held for this activity. Biometric information it can be information about the way you look, so a physical feature on your body, and it also includes information about like the distinctive way you move. So about the way you look, I mean, the classic one is a face or fingerprint, and a behavioural biometric might be the way you type, the way you walk, or the way your voice sounds, things like that. Samples and templates are just forms of samples are sort of pre-processed biometric information like a photo, and then a template is when it has actually been processed by the system. So it covers both of those. Biometric processing, the broad definition is when you use a biometric system to either compare or analyze people's biometric information to either do one of three things. So to verify them, they are who they say they are, to identify them out of a list or database of people, or to categorize them. And I'll talk a bit more about categorization in a second. And a biometric system is a computer or technological based system. And the importance of that is the code doesn't apply to manual systems. So if you go to the supermarket and you want to purchase alcohol and the attendant looks at your driver's license and your face, that's a manual comparison. The code doesn't apply to that. So the three types of biometric processing that the code does apply to, we've got verification, which is a one-to-one matching. So if you go through a e-gates at the passport, that's what's happening there. Or you ring your bank and they check that your voice matches the one they have on file for you. Identification is one-to-many matching. So facial recognition in a supermarket, for example, to identify if you've been banned from the supermarket is an identification process. And then categorization is not a comparison. It's when the biometric information is analysed to make inferences or to detect something about that person. So that covers detecting age estimation, detecting someone's attention or alertness level, and emotion analysis. So there's systems that purport to be able to tell what mood you're in. What does the code do? The code modifies some of the information privacy principles to clarify and strengthen how they apply to an organization who's using biometric processing. So if you remember, there's the 13 information privacy principles that are in the Privacy Act. The code takes them, it calls them rules for some reason that's beyond me, but they're called rules in the code, and some of them are tweaked or changed to make them specific to the biometric processing context, and in some cases to add a requirement. And so you can see this slide sort of shows how that works. You've got the information privacy principles on one side. So all of them do apply to biometric processing, but the code like duplicates them, but it modifies a few of them. So Rule 1, for example, there's the general rule, only collect information that you need. And then Rule 1 in the code clarifies what this means. There's an additional proportionality requirement and a safeguard requirement. And then we've also got Rule 3 and Rule 10, the sort of main new rules that or new requirements that the code introduces. And there are minor modifications to those other rules, but I'm not going to cover them, and they're a little bit more technical. Yeah. So Rule 1 says that you may only collect biometric information if it is necessary and proportionate for your purpose. So I'll just focus on the necessity limb in this slide. So the basic rule in the Privacy Act and the IPPs is to only collect information that you actually need to achieve your purpose. And it's often referred to as data minimization. And it's a fairly fundamental privacy data protection rule. And the code clarifies what this means. So it kind of says in the biometrics context, to demonstrate that you need information, you need to show that the biometric processing is going to be effective in achieving your purpose. And effective means that there should be a logical connection between using your this biometric process, this system, the biometrics, and the actual purpose for using it. So, for example, in the when they wanted to roll out facial recognition in supermarkets to combat crime, the question we asked was, do you know that this will actually be effective in reducing crime? And so that's why, one of the reasons why they went and did a trial to actually see if that was the case, if there is a difference between, if there is a connection, you know, if it's going to be effective using facial recognition to reduce, does that cause a reduction in crime or you know, achieve a reduction in crime? And the second limb is you need to have considered less privacy intrusive alternatives, sort of comparable less privacy intrusive alternatives. Example I use is a gym might want to use facial recognition to allow access. You know, there are probably alternatives they could use, like a swipe card. However, you know, depending on the gym's specific circumstances, they might decide that actually those other ones aren't as good, but they still need to consider them. And if you, so there's a provision in the code to allow an agency to undertake a trial And if you do a trial, you defer the effectiveness requirement. So you only need to show effectiveness at the end of your trial once you have a bit more data. And that's to make sure that innovation and new uses of biometrics aren't sort of curtailed by the code. Proportionate is the next limb. This is a new requirement introduced by the code. And so organizations should only use a biometric system if it would be proportionate in the circumstances. And the three things you need to take into account, and we've got very good guidance on all of this. The three things are: what is your benefit? What's the sort of positive outcome of using the biometric processing, and to who? And if it's to the individual themselves or to the public, that's going to be quite a strong reason, strong reason in favor of using biometric processing. And then you also need to consider the privacy risk involved. So what are the risks of negative impacts on people, and can you mitigate these? So if the system doesn't work as intended, what's going to happen? What's the impact of errors? Is there an expectation of being monitored? Is there going to be a chilling effect on that person? Is the population you're implementing on it particularly vulnerable? And then can they exercise their rights if something goes wrong? And then the third thing to take into account is, are there any impacts on Māori? Does the system work the same on people with different skin tones? Or are there any cultural perspectives that you want to take into account? And that requirement is in there because the Privacy Act requires that the Privacy Commissioner takes account of cultural perspectives. And through consultation, we learned that Māori do feel very strongly, some Māori stakeholders and groups feel very strongly about biometrics. Also in Rule 1 is a new requirement to adopt and implement privacy safeguards. And these are things that reduce privacy risk. And the guidance has examples of safeguards. So there's no, it's sort of up to the organization's discretion as to which safeguards are appropriate. But you do need to show that you have considered and implemented some safeguards. There will always be safeguards that are relevant. So it might be deleting the information immediately if there's no match. For example, that's a common one in facial recognition. Allowing the individual to give their authorization and have an alternative available. Testing or trialing the system, various security safeguards, training your staff, etc. And I won't go into the Rite Aid pharmacies case because I am a little bit short of time, I realise. Rule 3 is about notification and transparency. So this is slightly stronger requirement than what's in the Privacy Code generally, but people must be made aware when you're using a biometric system that you are collecting their biometrics, why they're using it, if there's an alternative option, what is it, and where to find more information. So that's really the minimum notification that you need to do, but you should also be telling people, how long you're keeping their biometric information for, their rights around accessing and correcting it, how they can raise a concern or complaint with you, the fact that they can complain to us, if you've made your proportionality assessment public, where they can go and view that, and if there's a trial. Then Rule 10 has a general sort of use rule which says that you should only use information for the reason that you've collected it, except unless an exception applies. So that's an example, in an emergency, you could use it for another reason. The code has limits on certain types of biometric categorization. So it puts limits around inferring or detecting people's health information without their consent, inferring emotion, personality, or mood, and inferring attention or alertness for a non-safety purpose. So that's obviously relevant here. So just to spell out what isn't limited: age estimation isn't limited, detecting attention for safety reasons isn't limited. You can infer health information with people's consent. And there's health agencies providing health services, they are excluded from the code. So these limits obviously don't apply to them. The thing I would just say here is, even if your type of biometric categorization is not limited, you still need to show that it's proportionate. We have heaps of guidance on our website, so go there if you need more information. And I won't cover the key takeaways, but because I'm aware of time, but yeah, they'll be in the PDF that's sent around. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks so much, Ella. That was some really useful information and a really great way of being able to translate what's in the code into things that we can actually take away and to understand the implications. So really appreciate your time on that. If you have any questions for Ella, I've already seen some come through in the Q&A block. So if you have any questions, please put those through using the Q&A function, and we will discuss them in the panel discussion at the end. It's great, but we'll move along now to our final speaker for today. And our final speaker is Grant Lowe. Grant's been an executive in transport and logistics for over 15 years and is currently customer experience manager at AutoSense. He brings a wealth of experience to the table when it comes to driver safety and safety culture. And in his own words, is given, what I've learned about fleet safety comes directly from the School of Hard Knocks, both professionally and personally. You may have seen Grant before at some of our events. He has previously presented as part of the AutoSense team, but also in previous roles at organisations where he was operating fleets. So he knows what it's like to be managing a fleet and drivers as well. So we appreciate your time and experience today, Grant. Thanks very much. And I can see your slides.
Yeah, you can see the slides. Can you hear me okay?
I can. That's great. Thanks very much. I'll hand over to you.
Well, thanks for the intro, Caroline. That's fantastic. You've also sort of explained a little bit about my journey, and I'm very grateful for this technology and what AutoSense has available. Personally and professionally, it's been a big part of my career, and I'm just grateful personally as well. Like it's improved my driving behaviour, some of the ingrained habits, some I didn't even know I had. So I'm very grateful for the tools that are available, and to keep us and myself and other drivers safe. So today is about practical implications for fleet operators. You've heard from Charles and Ella. You obviously covered the code and some of the reasons why it's important. So all those accidents that we still, all those sleepiness events that we're still seeing. And this is really just about for fleet operators using the video systems, what it means in real terms. So it's about practical realities, the everyday habits and the governance that prevents most problems that you'll have when using this technology, and how we help you. How are we meeting the code's requirements in practice? So we're going to start by looking at when driver-facing safety systems actually become a privacy issue and what it means under the biometric code for fleet operators. And then I'll focus around some of the common handling risks, things like access, download, screen recording. That's where most of the issues arise. Whether you run light vehicles or heavy vehicles, one key message that runs through today is the information these systems collect should be treated as sensitive. Even if you're only using a basic dash cam type video technology and it doesn't have biometric features, good privacy habits still matter. So by the end of the session, you'll have a bit of a simple checklist. I'll also have some information available to pass out via Caroline, and what to check on your system. how to introduce a data protection impact assessment, and the handling rules that, you know, reduce risk very quickly and practically. So we'll kick into it. So why this matters? Well, some video systems don't just record, they analyze. And that's the moment the privacy obligations get more serious, because now you are deriving information about how a person looks, moves, or behaves, not just storing a clip. Often they're inferring something about that information, such as a driver is distracted, fatigued, or not alert. Most of the issues come from ordinary process mistakes. So too many people can view the footage, people downloading clips for convenience or screenshots, and screen recordings, and things getting shared outside the controlled environment. So today, the point is not to scare you, it's to get the basics right, keep the purpose tight, you know, that we're doing it for safety, limiting access, and keeping footage inside as best we can inside the system that has controls. So the first question is, does the system trigger biometric obligations? So you don't need to know the full ins and outs of the algorithm it might be using. If you can answer yes to these, you need to treat it as biometric processing and put some governance around it. So a driver-facing camera that's tracking eyes, face, or head movements. The system labels it as labels some sort of driver state, so fatigue, distraction, and it creates an event and shows clips in a portal. Those will be key ones that video technology is often throwing up to fleet operators. So to give you an example of this, I'm going to cover one of our leading technology, the Guardian system. So the Guardian system uses a driver-facing camera with computer vision. It analyzes facial cues like eye movement, eye closure, head positioning, and now the latest technology around gaze. And that's based on established fatigue science. The purpose is safety, to detect whether a driver is present in there and whether they are fatigued or distracted and at risk. And most importantly, the Guardian system is there to do something in real time. And I think when we talked about some of those other methodologies, that's where this system, this type of systems really is critical, is because it's reacting in real time. Alerts are activated to the driver to address the immediate risks, and they could be audio or a combination of audio and haptics. And these, in the Guardian's case, these have been researched and tested by human factor experts to ensure they are very effective in what they do. Now, the system doesn't do biometric identification, so the system does not identify who the driver is or create any biometric templates or recognize the drivers across trips or vehicles. The biometric analysis happens in real time, and anything it picks up to make a decision are temporary and not stored once the event decision is made. So it will categorize it, and then when it's detected, aside from alerting the driver and doing something in real time, limited event, like the event type that it's classified or categorized and the timing of when that's occurred and for how long, it's shared via the Guardian Live portal. And events, and this is really important for the Guardian system, events are reviewed and verified by trained humans before being confirmed. This human verification process, it really improves the accuracy of the events being detected. And in particular, for microsleepers verified, we also have a fatigue intervention plan as triggered. So typically you are you get notifications and you will get a call from the Guardian Centre to help fleet operators and the people that are managing the people that are at risk to get in and manage that immediate safety risk. So Guardian is primarily event driven, but it does, the Gen 2 model does have some, does store temporarily encrypted footage, which can be accessed by trained technicians for defined purposes like incident investigations or systems assurances. The Gen 3 device, one of the latest ones, actually doesn't currently have that feature. It is literally the moment it transmits the footage from the device, it actually erases it. So if you're in a portal like Guardian Live, that's it's really key. It's what people can see, and it's what depends on, and what they can see depends on their role. And you can give control to that, so you can access what users can do and see. So that role design and access is a big part of your privacy compliance. So hopefully that helps you understand it. So if biometric obligations applies, so the operator's responsibilities are obviously informing drivers, and it's mostly around governance and good practice. The themes are: be clear on the purpose. Why are we doing it? Make sure it's proportional and reasonable, and communicate it to people, communicate it to the drivers so they understand it. Show it's needed and proportionate, and we've got some tools for that. A good thing to do is a data protection impact assessment, which is a bit like health and safety risk assessment, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that later. And protect access, security and retention, and respect the rights of drivers, so they have rights to access what's captured of them, and make complaints and corrections to anything that's been classified if it's incorrect. So I know it's got an acronym here, the Data Protection Impact Assessment. So what is this? It's your show you're working. So how did you arrive there? And it will, together with your safe driving policy, they work together. And if you don't have one of those, you really should, because driving is one of your biggest critical risks. So you should have something in your policies around it. AutoSense, we maintain a standard DPIA for what we do. So for the Guardian biometric processing, for instance, and it can be used by our clients to help them with this. And certainly we've done it as a kind of a standard approach, so that because the configuration doesn't often materially change, but it does need to be customized by our customers. In plain terms, what it does, it covers what the system does. So, observing facial features, etc., to detect fatigue and distraction, why the purpose is safety risk reduction, and that it's biometric categorization. So it's talking about what it does and doesn't do. So it doesn't do identity verification, for instance. So it's talking about that. It also helps you with the practical questions. How will drivers be informed? How do you handle the worker context? The consent imbalance, drivers feeling like they can't opt in and out. Why it's necessary and proportionate, which we've covered a little bit about. What you minimize, who can access the data, how long it's retained. It identifies the privacy risks, how you're going to mitigate them, and what safeguards you can rely on. So the role-based access and encryption, and how it's stored by your suppliers, and also what to do if something goes wrong. So some of the best practices: keep the footage in the portal, unless you truly need it out. The portal is designed to have access controls, and this is something you should be looking at with your video technology. Standard users, you can limit their viewing, what they can and can't do, the admin tasks they can perform. So admins can control, users, what they're restricted, what they can and can't see, whether they can see the in-cab video, etc. or not, and also control who can download. And that's really important, because downloading is where it gets tricky. It can create uncontrolled copies if it's not handled with strict controls, and that's often where it can go pear-shaped. So, in the case of a Guardian system, by default, it's not given to every user. You decide, and you should be deciding, who should have it. The practical rule is minimize who can download. And if you do download it, you need to treat it like sensitive evidence, store it securely, and apply some sort of retention destruction rules. The good news is the portal handles a lot of that. It handles retention and destruction. As a supplier to AutoSense, Seeing Machines, who provide the Guardian Live portal, they handle the retention timelines. In their case, that's 12 months, and then the information is erased. They also take care of a lot of the you know, they have, whilst it's stored in the cloud, where it's stored and the type of tool. So Amazon warehouses and they have very strict security protocols that they test, and they have lots of independent checks on their security to ensure that they've got the highest level of protection. So some of the dangers: screen recording. It's one of those things that you can't invent. If you even if you lock down downloads, if somebody can view footage, they might be able to use their phone to capture it. They can screen record and things like that. So you need to, for this, your best controls are procedural methods. So call it out in policies. You need to limit the viewers. So really think about who is going to be viewing this. Don't screen share driver footage without consultation or consent with those individuals in the footage. So even at meetings, and set clear rules about unauthorized capturing and how it's treated as potential privacy breaches and maybe other policy breaches. So it's really important that access and permission models matter in the portal in particular. Standard access for most users, admin for a very small, and just narrow the scope as much as you possibly can, even to the fleets they need to see, which the Guardian portal can do. So some common pitfalls, we already covered some of them. Emailing footage around. So you've downloaded it and somebody emails it, all of a sudden you can download it on personal devices to shared devices. All of a sudden you start losing some of the controls over the footage. Too many people with access. Who really needs this stuff? Screen sharing footage in meetings is a classic. And if you've gone and set that this is a safety tool, potentially using it as performance management system it's not using it as a safety system. So you have to be really careful about how that can undermine trust and also increase privacy risk. And one of the other pitfalls is not thinking about the destruction and retention. So when you download it, where have you downloaded it, and when will it be destroyed, and how long is it retained? So we would use the likes of SharePoint, where you can have where it can have automatic things in place where it will delete files after a certain amount of time. There's lots of tools that you can use for this, but you should be thinking about these things. So who does what? So one of the things you need to consider is, well, where does your video technology supplier fit in, and where do their suppliers fit into this? So the operator, you decide why you're using it, how it's used. You're managing the policies, you're doing all the driver consultation and communication. Those are all really core responsibilities that you have. And obviously, as a provider, we support all of that. So some of the templates, guidance, we help you with explaining why it's important, so the needs evidence. And our suppliers, well, they provide the platforms, and they have some of the safeguards in place. So, how the portal works, how it has the clear roles and guidance, how they protect that data in the cloud, how it's the retention of it and so forth. So, and they also help us with the needs evidence. So, Seeing Machines is, they've done a lot of research. It was born out of research by at universities. They've done a lot of work, and so you've got a trusted platform to use for protecting your drivers. So some of the questions you should be asking your supplier. So what does it measure? What is it analyzing? What is the evidence that it's needed for safety? So that's just, again, to help you. What's stored and for how long, where it's stored. So is it stored in New Zealand? Is it stored offshore? Who else handles it? Who can access it? And how is it managed and protected? So how do I, how do I, as the user of this technology, ensure that I can meet the code? How can I protect access through the portal, and who's got access? So how does the tool support you with that? And you have to remember, if you suspect you've had a privacy breach, you need to act fast. You need to raise the alarm quickly, contain, access, sharing, preserve the evidence, and assess the harm and notify if you need to. So the journey, the trust journey, implementation. So we talked about that you can actually do trials. So driver engagement is really important early on. So making sure that you establish the purpose and use, and that's really important for establishing that trust. Use the process of a data protection impact assessment, that risk assessment, but also covering all the elements. It's a really good practice to get across, are we doing this for the right things? How do we minimize? How do we meet our obligations? Define the policies and clear boundaries, including what it will not be used for. And make sure that you run training, manager training on appropriate use and access. And really important that you train drivers, help them understand it, and their rights to access and to potentially challenge the categorization and the results of the biometric processing. So the next steps is, firstly, don't ignore. Like, I think one of the things that you come across something like this and you think, oh, this is quite scary, but actually we can make it easy. And fatigue and distractions are very, very real risks that we need addressing. So understand your position, where you're at in the process. Have we already got it? Are we looking at getting it? Do you have a safe driving policy? Have you completed a data protection impact assessment, training your people, and implement with clear boundaries? And if you're new to that technology, do that trial, and we can help with all of these things, and that's what your service provider should do. That's the end of the presentation. Hopefully that's covered everything.
Thank you, Grant, for that. Obviously, a lot of information included in that, but really helpful in terms of looking at how that code translates into things that you actually need to do as a fleet operator and fleet suppliers as well, that are involved in that too. So thank you for that. We've got a little bit of time for questions, so I will invite our other presenters to put their cameras back on and come back off mute as well. So Ella and Charles, if I can get you to do that, fantastic. So we have had a couple of questions through. So first of all, I'll come to you, Grant, since you've just finished your presentation. There's one come through for you. First of all, based on your experience, what are the factors that support driver onboarding the best, build strong driver engagement and camera acceptance?
Yeah, I think the core thing about that is really engaging with drivers. I found that finding in your driving community the people that are really engaged can help be a big part of that. And you'll often find if you do a trial that it'll throw up examples of where this tool, and often people do that, they will know of scenarios where it's saved other people and where this tool has been really useful. So I think those sort of things can really help, because the reality is we have this optimism bias that always happens to somebody else. And so often drivers think, yeah, I don't need this. It's not really for me. I don't need, and that can be the biggest challenge. But I think if you can bring it to real life examples within your own team and and have people who may be able to be honest and share their experiences either at your organization or other organizations, and also just sharing the data. So I think, Charles has shared, we have the insights reports and things like that. I mean, it's very real that we're waking up 53 people every day. So it does highlight that this sort of technology is needed. So I think just taking the drivers on the journey, you're going to have knockers. That's just unfortunately the nature of it. But the best thing to do is just bring it in and get some key people alongside you and make sure you do that consultation as part of it.
Yeah, and there are, as you, Grant, there are plenty of case studies out there. AutoSense have them as well. We have some from various different examples of fleet operators who have put various measures in place and got driver support and started to build that safety culture, and getting that driver buy-in to these sort of systems where you've got, and what their experience has been in terms of reducing risk, but that impact on not only the organisation but the individual as well, and the difference that it's made to individual drivers as well when you're implementing various safety measures there too. So there are lots of different case studies out there that can be used both in terms of camera technology and other fleet safety measures as well, which can help to gain driver buy-in too.
Great.
Thanks
cool.
for that, Grant. I've got one for Ella, so I'll just bring you in here. It was a question related to your presentation. Given the strong response around biometric systems by Maori, has the Commission implemented any responses as a result of this, or anything any specific information in there in relation to that?
Yeah, good question. Two things I'll say is, so the decision to issue a code was informed by public and stakeholder engagement, including engagement with Māori. So the actual decision to sort of put stronger protections around biometric processing was informed by views from Māori as well as the general public and a range of stakeholders. And then secondly, so the proportionality requirement does have a sort of, as part of that, there is a mandatory requirement to consider any impacts on Māori, so that is any particular cultural perspectives or any ways that the biometric processing might impact Māori groups differently, and that might be due to accuracy differences, which has been historically the case in some biometric systems, although they are getting better. And so if a biometric processing system, had really significant negative impacts on Māori, that would factor into the proportionality assessment and to an agency deciding whether they should use it or not. And we have again, in the guidance, we have a really good couple of pages for just thinking through how you assess that particular cultural impacts and effects requirement, and what you can do, and things like, consultation I think is really important if the biometric system is, the people subject to the biometric system, if there is a higher percentage of Māori in that.
Good call.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that, Ella. And I think looking at the time, and we've run over very slightly, that's probably all the time we have for questions on this, but thank you to all of the speakers for your time today. Just a reminder that we will be sending out both the recording and also a PDF copy of the slides following the webinar as well, so you will have access to all of that, and there are a couple of additional resources which we'll put links into in that follow-up email as well. So just to finish off with, I am going to quickly just share my screen to let you know about a couple of forthcoming events and initiatives that we have coming up. So we've got a number of fleet events booked in over the next few months which are coming up. Again, these will all be in the slides, and details of these events will be going online very shortly. We also have Road Safety Week coming up in May, so it's not very far away at all now. The dates this year are the 4th to the 10th of May. It has the theme Be a Road Safety Hero, and you can go to the Road Safety Week website to sign up. We do get a lot of companies that get involved each year, and you get access to free resources through the website. So please do join in and take part in that. Also, if you know a road safety hero, and there are definitely some professional road safety heroes in and amongst the fleet operator group. We're a member of the Yellow Ribbon Road Safety Alliance, and they run the Road Safety Hero Awards each year. So these are currently open for nominations until the 17th of April. This year they've been extended to 3 categories. So there is a Youth Award, a Community Award, and a Professionals Award. So if you'd like more information or to nominate someone in these awards, then please go online and nominate them. We'd love to have your entries in for that. And we will have more information coming up soon on the Australasian Fleet Champions Awards for this year as well. So those entries will be coming online shortly. And as a charity, Break is reliant on donations, fundraisers, and our corporate partners to help us to continue our work. So if you're able to help us in some way, or you'd like to know more about how you can work with us, then please get in contact. There are lots of ways to get involved and support our work. And one of the key things at the moment, just to let you know about, is we fundraise through the entertainment membership. If you've not come across this before, some of you might have done a lot of schools and sports clubs also fundraise in this way. But the membership gives you discounts such as buy one, get one free, or money off at restaurants, attractions, hotels, and flights, and lots of other things too. It now comes as one single membership for $75, which gets you access to all of the offers across New Zealand, Australia, and Bali. And if you buy one this month up until the end of March, we get double the normal donation that we would get from a membership sale. So we get $30 through to us as a charity, and you also receive an entry to their big competition this year, which is to go into the draw to win a cruise to Antarctica, which is a pretty significant prize here. So entertainment memberships are another way that we fundraise as well. So finally, I hope you found today's webinar useful and interesting. Thank you again to all of our speakers, to Charles, to Ella, and to Grant, and to our sponsors, AutoSense, and to all of you for joining and taking part. We hope to see you at another webinar again soon.